Emily was close to fainting.
Look, you just stand here while I feel around for the door.
No, I'm not letting go of you.
Panic in her voice.
I think it must be over there. We just came straight in.
Both of them reached out with their arms, stretching them out in every direction in the hopes of finding the door. Emily caught something. It felt like the hanging drapes of the four-poster bed. For a moment she hung on, and then, as if this triggered what happened next, they heard the sound of crashing timbers behind them, and guessed the ancient bed had collapsed. At that moment there was frantic mewing and screeching of a cat, and the air filled with the smell of ancient rotten dust and dirt, almost choking them. Now thoroughly terrified, they were even more desperate to escape. Will's hand felt around knob, and he prayed this was the door and not a cupboard. At that moment he thought he'd felt something clawing at his face. Forcing the door open, the dim light in the corridor felt like a huge crystal chandelier had been turned on. Half dragging Emily now, they began to stumble and run away from that dreadful room. Will couldn't help glancing back over his shoulder, only to see the door quietly closing behind them. Later neither of them remembered how they'd found their way back to the wedding reception. By this time most people had made their way to bed except Christopher, who was still sitting near the bar, with the expression of thank goodness that's over. He looked up when he saw them come back into the room, and quickly poured them a large brandy each, saying,
"You look as though you need this. Where the hell have you been and what happened?"
Both Emily and Will were too shocked to reply.
"What happened to your face, Will? Don't tell me Emily scratched you because you were too forward."
Will glanced in the mirror behind Christopher, and saw blood seeping from numerous deep scratches down one cheek.
No, it must have been the cat in the four-post room.
"What room and what cat?"
We wanted to find somewhere quiet to talk.
Christopher asked quietly. We found a passage and decided to explore. The one behind the curtain, and the sign that said no entry. Most of the place looked half derelict until we came across this room with the four-poster bed. It was lit up and seemed inviting. Christopher said nothing, and allowed Will to blurt it all out. How the lights had gone out and they'd been left into total darkness. How he'd tried to use his phone torch and that had failed. It was at this moment Will realized he'd lost his phone. He must have dropped it in their panic. Emily just sat there as though in a semi-coma, too stunned to add anything to the men's conversation. Christopher began to talk. There is an old rumor about the room. The bed has long gone. Apparently a young couple of lovers made the same decision you were about to do. Anyway, they climbed up onto the bed, and as they lay there the old bed just fell apart. The heavy beams and timbers, along with the tapestry drapes, crashed down on them, smothering and trapping them. It was several days before they were found. Everybody thought they had eloped. Nobody guessed they were still in the old house. They were found lying together on the bed under all the debris, with only his hand stretched out as if appealing for help. Just inside the door a cat was discovered, its mouth open as though giving its last cry. Its legs and claws stretched out as if trying to claw its way out. It's said that sometimes a cat is still heard crying and scratching in that part of the house. Neither Will nor Emily could say anything. Shock etched on both their faces.
"You go off and clean up your face, William, otherwise Jane might wonder what you've been up to. Just say that you caught your cheek on the rose bush near the car park when you went out to check on something in your car. I'll stay here with Emily. I don't think either of you should go off to join your spouses until you have recovered yourselves. You can say that the three of us sat up late talking about our teenage days."
Next day, Christopher went behind the curtain and retraced the path Will and Emily had walked. He found the room. As he expected, there was nothing but dust and dirt, except Will's phone lying on the floor in the middle of the room. He picked it up and quietly returned it to its owner. He hadn't known what to believe last night. Had they heard the story about the young couple dying in that room and were just using it to cover up their illicit liaison? But that didn't account for the deep marks of claws down one side of Will's face and neck. And how did his phone get there?